Pending bill is a legitimate problem, but it is also at the heart of corruption.
The national government pending bills since June 2005 to June 2022 stood at 481 billion shillings, while counties owe 159 billion shillings.
Seme tu inatapeliwa hapa katikati, huyu anakula kidogo, mwingine kidogo, na pesa inaisha kama mwananchi hajasaidika.
Niko na maisha masio mazuri kwa sababu nimepoteza mtoto na niongelei.
Tunawapelekanga watu huko mbali kwa sababu ya huduma.
We are now living under conditions which are beyond our control, which we really wish we can overcome. So now the question is, how long is this going to go? There's a lot of weaknesses, system weaknesses, which.
So we stop Kenya, who are being appointed by political seats. The interest is to make.
I think there could be an element, seriously, of the capture of the system capture.
Governors told us that in those documents.
Most jobs or most tenders that are advertised in government portals, that job has already been allocated to somebody. It's already gone.
I have seen very desperate, sick, really, really sick, but they cannot even afford, painkillers to be able to at least relieve some of that pain. And it's really sad. You get emotionally attached, you want to help at times.
There's a lot of weaknesses, systemic weaknesses, which we've raised in the reports.
Most of these top Kenyans who are being appointed by political seats, the interest is to make money.
I think there could be an element, seriously, of the capture, of the system capture.
Governors told us that we have sight of the documents. They have never seen those documents.
Most jobs or most tenders that are advertised in government portals, that job has already been allocated to somebody. It's already gone.
I have seen very desperate situations where someone is sick, really, really sick, but they cannot even afford, painkillers to be able to at least relieve some of that pain. And it's really sad. You get emotionally attached, you want to help at times.
This equipment were delivered to counties on Saturday, on Sunday, at night in cartons.
We were able to establish the office for her company, the Samantha Associates, and we were able to meet Stella.
Did you resign? Did you consider resigning? If not, why not?
It starts from the board all the way to the top political seats in this country. It ends there. At the two top seats, they are responsible for this mess.
There's a lot of weaknesses, systemic weaknesses, which we've raised in the reports.
Most of these top Kenyans who are being appointed by political seats, the interest is to make money.
I think there could be an element, seriously, of the capture, of the system capture.
Governors told us that we have sight of the documents. They have never seen those documents.
Most jobs or most tenders that are advertised in government portals, that job has already been allocated to somebody. It's already gone.
I have seen very desperate situations where someone is sick, really, really sick, but they cannot even afford, painkillers to be able to at least relieve some of that pain. And it's really sad. You get emotionally attached, you want to help at times.
This equipment were delivered to counties on Saturday, on Sunday, at night in cartons.
We were able to establish the office for her company, the Samantha Associates, and we were able to meet Stella.
Did you resign? Did you consider resigning? If not, why not?
It starts from the board all the way to the top political seats in this country. It ends there. At the two top seats, they are responsible for this mess.
Good evening and welcome to this episode of The Big Picture, Big Conversations. This is where humor meets depth. For today, we're having a not so good conversation, but also a very important conversation for you to hear and contribute to. We have two guests in studio, and there's a huge topic in the country right now. 11 billion was allegedly stolen, yes, you heard that right, stolen, from the National Health Insurance, what was that, was then that, but now it's the Social Health Insurance Fund, or SHIF. Some of you would call it SHA. Honestly, we use those words so interchangeably these days, but they mean so different things. And that's why we have two people who will explain from two sides of the conversation how this sort of theft of this massive scale can affect healthcare delivery in the country. So, as I've said, 11 billion stolen, but healthcare delivery in the country remains a problem. But the president and his proponents keep saying that things are okay, SHIF or SHA is working, it's all noise, and it's negativity from the press and not real life stories of actual Kenyans. Today we'll be interrogating whether those claims are true. And to do that, my name is Tom Mukwana. I'm your lead co-host for the evening. As usual, I do this every Monday with my co-host,
Justine Wanda. I'm a stand-up comedian and a human rights advocate and activist, if you will. Yeah.
Brilliant. Justine, I didn't have to do it today. Thank you so much.
I was covering for you, man.
Manze, but Justine and I are not enough to have this very heavy conversation. To have this conversation, we have two gentlemen who are on two different sides of this debate here. First of all, one of the guests today is Dr. Brian Lishenga. Dr. Brian Lishenga is the chairman of the Rural and Urban Private Hospitals Association. Did I get that right?
You got that right.
Doctor, the and is there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is a cancer survivor. Derrick? Yeah. Asante sana kwa kuja.
Welcome.
Derrick has been through the worst you can imagine. And by that I mean chemotherapy, and he's gone through it all. He'll tell you what his experience is. But aside from his experience fighting cancer, he'll tell us how SHIF is working for him. Is it working? Is it not? His experience will give us the answer today. And Brian knows more than most people how this whole system works. India?
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Not unfair.
I know a whole lot.
You know a whole lot about it. Brian, I'll ask you this question in the most cut and straight way possible. Is it a lie what people are saying that SHIF is not working? Is it true? You have over 700 hospitals under the private association.
The answer depends on who you're asking. Yeah, so that's a straight answer. Yeah. And if you listen to public conversations, this is why this is very divisive. It's very divisive because it just depends on who you bump into and ask the question. And I explain this way. If, for instance, you speak to the minister, the cabinet secretary for health, or the PS for health, or if you speak to the president, so will tell you SHA is working.
Yeah.
In fact, it's the best thing since sliced bread. If you speak to Mwananchi, so it depends on who you're asking. Some have positive experiences, and we have many who have negative experiences. If you speak to healthcare providers and doctors, I mean healthcare facility owners or administrators and doctors and nurses, they will probably tell you SHIF is not working.
Well, obviously the government will say that it's working.
Yeah, so...
But before we get to the actual details of it, our audience might not understand the difference between NHIF and SHIF.
Yeah.
How did you even spend a ton of money to move between these systems, and why?
Okay, so there's SHA, which is the Social Health Authority. Now, SHA manages now, I think it's growing every day, but by law, it is supposed to manage 3 funds. This is what we passed in what we call the SHA Act, Social Health Insurance Act in 2023. So 3 funds: the Primary Healthcare Fund, the Social Health Insurance Fund, which is what people commonly call SHIF, and the Emergency Chronic and Critical Illnesses Fund, the ECCIF. So those are the 3 funds that by law are supposed to be managed by the Social Health Authority. And then, sometime last year, through what, without mincing my words, I would say an irregular process, they included what we call the Public Officers Medical Fund. So POMF, which is a medical fund for civil servants. So this is included through some clever gimmick around regulations and things like that. But it's not found in the SHA Act. The SHA Act only has the 3 funds I started with. And then recently, I'm sure those who follow this conversation, teachers were brought on board. So I think it's called the Elimu Medical Fund, or let's just call it the Teachers Medical Fund. There are conversations going on now, and I think that this will happen in March, where now we'll have police officers with now their own fund. This will be prison officers and your regular police officers.
Why are we establishing all these funds?
So you are going to end up. So that was how many? I'm losing count. So this is now going to be 6 funds managed by the Social Health Authority by by March for sure. So why are we doing this? It's a very complex question. I think that the civil servants, the Public Officers Medical Fund, was brought in December 2025. Earlier. Media actually brought in June. The reason why it was brought in was to steady SHA financially. This is because for the first year of the existence of SHA, the money was not coming in. Their projections were not meeting up with reality. There was a big disconnect. And if you recall, there was a huge uproar around August last year from healthcare facilities about non-remittance of payments. The reason was it was a cash flow crunch. Now, one of the ways government solves this is to simply dip into another pot. So the civil servants were hanging around there, somewhere. And so they basically, I think it's about 4 billion shillings a year, the Public Officers Medical Fund. So they brought that in to sort of steady the ship. Then that wasn't enough. So the 2 other medical funds, largest, that are legally outside SHA, are the teachers and police officers. The teachers' medical scheme on its own is right now, it might change in a few years because we've employed so many more teachers recently, 17 billion shillings.
But
the police is 9 billion shillings.
Daktari, why are we moving from NHIF to SHIF?
Kenya Kwanza Manifesto.
Okay, so it's a political thing.
It's a political decision.
Okay.
I think the Kenya Kwanza administration had a very ambitious manifesto. The manifesto was tackle big problems very quickly. And maybe sometimes invent big problems and tackle them as fast as you can. So they identified health as one of the key pillars where they wanted to go in and sort of address issues. So this is how it looks like.
That's how it is. Derrick, do you feel included in the SHIF? Because first of all, when were you diagnosed with cancer? And what's been your experience with SHIF?
Okay, so I was diagnosed in 2022, March, but then we had NHIF. Yeah, so I think I already registered on the platform. So when I got my cancer diagnosis, I started using NHIF. And in comparison to what we currently have, I think my experience with NHIF was very much better compared to, from 2020, was it 23, 24, when now they brought in SHA. I think I had chemotherapy. I started with radiotherapy when I had in NHIF, and NHIF covered the first sessions of radiotherapy that I had, all of them. And there are cases where they would cover almost 3/4 of my chemotherapy. So that has never happened with the SHA that I currently have, because I've had cases where I'm going in for surgery and we make a request. and it's, you know, rejected when I come out of surgery. So with SHA, I mean, request or claims can be flipped from approved to rejected within minutes or within hours or overnight. There's literally someone who's just working with that app. I don't know whether it's an app or a system. So it's someone who's controlling your life. So my experience with SHA or SHIF or whatever it is has been really, really bad. And this is not about politics or academic. It's about my life. Because now when SHA was brought and what was on paper was really, you know, looking good, and I thought it was going to be better than NHIF. You know, my expectation was it was going to be, you know, what was not covered in NHIF was going to be covered by SHA. But SHA is worse in the sense that they have reduced the coverage for my case, because I have like, you know, I have like documented experiences of, you know, text messages and everything. I've had 4 surgeries since SHA was introduced, and all of them have been rejected.
We haven't mentioned the type of cancer that you have.
Oh, sorry. So I was diagnosed with the Kaposi sarcoma, which is basically cancer of the soft tissues. I think I started feeling unwell in 2020, but we didn't know it was cancer until it was 2022 January. So that's when I did the biopsy, and it confirmed that it was cancer about 2 months later. So I started my treatment in March of 2022. I've had 3 recurrences. The first one was on my left lung, then the other one was on my left neck. You can see the marks of the tumor removal. Then recently I had another recurrence on my left knee. So it's been moving along the left side of my body. But most of this treatment, especially after 2023, I've had to cover the amount of pocket, which has really, you know, gone up the roof.
It's a huge burden.
It's a huge burden. It's a huge burden for me, yeah. Because considering the fact that when I had this diagnosis, I didn't have, you know, you never prepare for cancer. You know, you don't have, unless maybe you have some sort of insurance that prepares you for that. That for me, I had no, you know, savings or family backups or anything. So I had to fundraise. Even with the NHIF, I still had to fundraise. But now when NHIF was phased out and we started using SHA, it got worse. Because remember, I'd done 18 chemotherapies, I'd done 12 radiotherapies, I've done a couple of surgeries, and these were essentially sponsored by my friends, not family, friends. So you coming back to these people, telling them that now I need more money than what you used to, you know, contribute. So it's been heavy, you know, with that. I call it begging, you know, fundraiser and everything. I term it as begging. It's traumatizing and humiliating in a way, yeah.
How much are you spending as you talk right now? How much are you spending?
Like the total amount?
Yeah.
It's going to about 7 million. Yeah, but what I'm supposed to do right now is way much expensive than the whole amount that I've spent. Yeah.
I think I'd have a question about the pre-authorization process, and this goes to you, Brian, considering the system works depending on what you see. Could you take us through what the pre-authorization process is and means, and also what that does to the hospitals themselves, or like the personnel who are working in the hospital? Because if, from Henry's experience, it can just be flipped while you're getting your procedure done, how is that even possible? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just hearing him, you know, talk about this exact experience for many Kenyans, and it's especially also frustrating for hospitals because, you know, as is described, if rejection is coming after surgery or after radiotherapy or chemotherapy, you've already spent, you know, expenditure has been done. You have, you know, your nurses, you know, your doctors, your drugs, you know, everything is spent, and being left with a patient for whom now you have to quote unquote harass for payment. What we have seen in many cases is hospitals now really struggling, and, you know, lawsuits and things like that. But they digitized the pre-authorization process. Now, there was a lot of buzz around that because that in itself should be a good thing. okay? If we're not doing paper anymore, everything is click of a button, it should be a good thing. But what then happened is very different from the law. The law requires that there should be peer review of pre-authorization cases. So that means that, if you have a cancer patient who needs chemotherapy, if you have any reason to question the prescription, so if I'm an oncologist, what peer review means that at SHA, we have an oncology peer, okay, who's going to look at my request and say, I think maybe it's going to. But until 2 years ago, there was not a single doctor at SHA. Until 1 year ago. Everybody there was, accountants, clerks, and, we had a few clinical officers and a few nurses, but not even a medical officer, let alone specialists.
So was that like patapota ilikuwa?
So, so you can imagine, I'm an oncologist, I send a request, I say, Henry needs radiotherapy, 12 cycles. And the person looking at my request is a guy who did software development. Like, now what is this, too much, X, send. So you have this crazy situation. They have not remedied to this day, because what the law requires is that there should be even a board, a board of doctors, specialists, all these people on the other side. But right now, pre-authorizations are subject to the financial health of SHA, not the health of patients. Okay?
What do you mean by that, financial health of SHA?
So if they think you are an expensive patient, you are probably going to be out of the door. Or if they think that the hospital is sending in too many requests, that could be another issue for rejection. So in essence, the decisions being made are financial decisions rather than decisions for healthcare. And so what happens now with digitization, as opposed to when we used to have papers, something will be sent back to you, but somebody can do it in their sleep, just wake up in the middle of the night, reject, something like that. Yeah. Now, to make it even worse, none of us has any idea where these rejections are happening. We don't know, who's doing it, who is in charge of the process. And the reason why I'm saying that is that it's only this year that the Social Health Authority has recruited directors. It's only last month that the Social Health Authority has recruited county administrators for SHA. When we transitioned, NHIF had 1,800 staff, including what we call benefits officers and quality assurance officers at local branches across the country. They laid off, out of this 1,800, they laid off 1,000 staff. Remained with a skeleton staff of 800. A lot of them have gone home. So we don't have anyone. So a hospital like Wifi goes to, previously, if there's an issue, I would go to my branch or even call, because we have their contacts, and say, hey, this patient is on the ward. If you are really concerned, why don't you take a walk, visit us, and come and confirm that the patient is there? Now, when you sweep away all these people, because there's a lot of narrative that even all the staff at NHIF were corrupt, okay? So you swept out all those guys because they were all bad, but you didn't replace them on time, because it takes a long time to replace 1,000 people. So we have a situation where no one to call. You have a call, the cabinet secretary says, call this number, you will get assisted. Idea can.
What happens when you call that number?
Well, for sure, if you call it over the weekend, it's not working. Okay, that you can be sure about. If you call it late at night, it's not working. And the likelihood that whoever is receiving the call has no idea about what to do is very high.
It's very high.
Because they took the call center and put it under something called the Digital Health Authority, DHA. So the call center is not even at SHA. So it's manned elsewhere by different people. So it's this big disconnect between what's happening to the patients and how SHA is handling them.
Derrick,
yes.
When you go to hospital, and at that time you described it lightly when you spoke right before now, that NHIF and SHIF are different in how they offer oncology services. Could you describe the descriptions, like the differences in how you'd go to hospital and what would be offered to you and versus what is there now?
Of course. So first of all, I don't know whether Dr. Brian is aware of this, because I speak to most of oncologists, and they tell me about this thing called the 360 app. I don't know, it's called 360 app, where, you know, not all doctors treat sick people. Like sometimes you just need, you know, maybe a checkup, or you have a crazy headache, you need to be checked. And I don't think we have enough oncologists in the country, so we probably get one doctor attending to maybe 10 hospitals. So according to this app, when you need to make a request, you should be within 500 meters within the hospital. So if you cannot make a request, let's say if I'm seeing this doctor in KNH and maybe he's in Aga Khan and he needs to make a request, he has to move over to, you know, this particular facility to you know, make the request so that they can be seen. So this is something that was not happening with NHIF, in as much as they say these have been digitalized, and I mean the system has, they spent a lot of money on, you know, preparing the system and stuff, but we have such flaws. We have a case of some terminologies, I mean some diagnosis not available on the system, so they have to look for, because I'm sure like Kaposi sarcoma is not available in the drop down, so the doctor has to maybe write a note, or maybe has to deal with a lot of rejections. We make calls and all that stuff. So this has been frustrating in what we now call a digitalized system, and they were not happening in NHIF. In as much as NHIF had a lot of paperwork, I mean the process was straightforward. You would walk in, fill it in, I mean, and you didn't have to deal with a lot of rejection. So for my experience, because I think I had like the same services during when NHIF was working, and now my experience with NHIF was way much better. It was cheaper. It was, to me, it was even faster, because you walk in, you fill the forms, you wait a few minutes.
How long does it take now?
It used to take sometimes a day, sometimes few hours. But they were not, I mean, the rejection rate was not at this high. Maybe if you've exceeded the limit of chemotherapy or radiotherapy, which they explain to you, that's normal. But for SHA, you start maybe a new line of chemotherapy or a new line of treatment, and you get a rejection in your first treatment procedure. So this was not happening with, I mean, they'll tell you, NHIF will tell you, we're going to cover like 30 cycles of radiotherapy. So maybe additional one, or maybe 12, and the rest you'll cover. So you know that is straightforward. But now with SHA, there's a lot of goodies on paper, but on the ground, it's totally different. So I'd say like, and again, this is not politics or anything, it's my experience. And it's been, I'd say SHA has been worse, my worst nightmare, because I really needed SHA. You know, like I mentioned, I depended on people for this entire period of time. And so when SHA was introduced, I thought it was going to be sort of relief, but it turned out to be worse than what I was previously, you know, using.
You've mentioned that there's some procedures that are not on the drop down, and I don't know also if you, as the doctor on this other side, are aware, or if you're given a menu of what is there, or you just start searching also with the patient so that you can figure out how to help them. So I would like to hear from both of you what other procedures that you may need did not appear, and how do you remedy that from the point of view of you, Derrick, and from you as a doctor. Yeah, I'll start with you, Derrick.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like for instance, cervical biopsy. I don't know whether it's available there, but it's not been there. So they used to choose something which is close. Actually, they told me Kaposi sarcoma was up there, so they either choose sarcoma and have to write a note with this particular one. So, and to me, it will be rejected because they say the doctor, or maybe whoever is handling my case, has entered incorrect diagnosis. To the facility, she will say they're trying to fraudulent the system. I mean, it's fraud because they're entering something. There are cases where you go in for a quick checkup, maybe you have a headache or something, you go in for MRI, they tell you we need to rush you to the theater, you have a tumor growing or something, so they have to make another request. Then you get a double rejection because now whoever's handling the system would say they're trying to, rig the system, and the doctor here is trying to just save the situation because now you had headache, but now they've discovered something and they can't wait for maybe you go back and you're treated. We get approval for this first diagnosis. Then, so I think those are some of the flaws that I've experienced, and they're sort of worrying, especially when you have chronic illness that literally don't wait for time. So, I know Kaposi sarcoma was not available there. I know a friend who had cervical issues and cervical biopsy was not available, and the doctor selected something, I can't remember the name, it had H in it, and she was rejected, and they actually said it's fraud. So this SHA has reduced patients and doctors and healthcare providers to be always just on the dashboard. You're just looking out for that rejected, and you try again. If I show you the messages, you can. There's one, we sent a request at 11 a.m. and by 5 p.m. it was rejected. We sent another one. I mean, and they don't give any reason. Say decline because of rejected. It doesn't make sense, and they don't give you any reason, so you keep on trying. Sometimes you go to the hospital, it's an emergency case, so you have to rush there and waiting that maybe NHF is going to come through for you. So it's really, for me, it's been traumatizing sort of, and so those are some of the experience that I've seen and I have to deal with.
Maybe just to add on this experience. So the whole problem with SHA right now and what he's explaining is everybody is a suspect. I have no idea how this happened, and I think this has been so deeply politicized, and Kenyans have been made to believe that the problem with the Kenyan health system is fraud. Okay, and this is not to say that fraud doesn't happen. I mean, it happens everywhere. It happens in the best healthcare systems. And in fact, the global statistics are that, the rate is something like 15% of medical claims have issues, but 85% of medical claims are correct. But what is happening in Kenya and with our leadership at SHA and the Ministry of Health, and what they are telling the president, just being privy to this, is that every time there is outcry, like his experience, every single time there, public outcry, the next thing you'll hear is a ministerial statement or a presidential statement saying those are cartels talking, those are thieves talking, those are the people who used to steal from NHIF talking. Now, so we have the entire health system now is running on a fraud narrative. So let me explain why everybody is a suspect. The reason why we have Practice 360, what he was explaining, this app, is what SHA is trying to do, and which I really fault them for. They are trying to do social engineering through digital systems. In other words, their intention is to change human behavior through IT. It's not healthcare. So if you think people are thieves, we are going to use IT to make them change to angels, And in the process, what they have done is every single person in the health system in Kenya has been criminalized. Everybody is a criminal. So the doctor, the reason why they want the doctor 500 meters at the hospital when they are making the pre-authorization, they don't believe the doctor. They do not believe. They just know that Kenyan doctors are all quacks and they are thieves. So you are a suspect until proven otherwise. They also believe Kenyan patients are fraudsters. They don't need this care. So, and this is explaining the high rate of rejections. But also on the point is mentioned of missing procedures. This is a problem brought about by the digitization project. I don't know if Kenyans remember that we went into a 10-year contract of 404 billion to digitize our entire health system. Now, the Ministry of Health has made a commitment to companies. Okay, they are signed contracts where they committed this country to 10 billion shillings in payment for digitization for the next 10 years, 10 billion per year.
It was supposed to come to 104 billion.
It's 104 billion shillings. The payments were scheduled to start in last year in February. The payment schedule is something like 500 million shillings a month, escalating to eventually get to about 750, 800 million shillings a month. Of course, if you ask me where this money is coming from, it's coming from contributions because the state is not really putting in money. Now, part of the problem why we are not being paid. But the companies that signed this digitization contract are under pressure to deliver. Now, what are they delivering? They are delivering experiments. So let me give you, Practice 360 is a deliverable for one of the companies. Because when they were selling this to the Kenya Kwanza administration, they told them, you know, the politicians were throwing around problems. They were saying, we have this problem, you know, doctors don't show up in hospital, they do this, you know, social engineering. How do we fix that? And somebody says, I have a brilliant idea. We'll give them an app, we will geolocate them. They have to be at the hospital. Which
is not practical.
It's impractical. No, look, we have less than 100 oncologists in Kenya. I think maybe even less than 50. You know, very few. I haven't seen the latest numbers, but the number of specialists are very few. Within here in Nairobi, there are probably about 30 around here in Nairobi. So, and I mean, we have 48,000 cancer cases every year. Now, if you're going to get 30 guys in Nairobi to be everywhere where a patient is making a pre-auth from, just because you don't trust these 30 guys, okay? What you're going to end up is the law of unintended consequences. Patients suffering, okay? Patients dying. Hospitals now stopping to take the risk, because what hospitals are doing, they've gotten to a point where they're saying, okay, there's a level of risk we will not take, okay? Because, you know, once bitten, twice shy. So once they reject his, you know, they do for him the radiotherapy, it's rejected once, rejected twice, the hospital is like, next time, just come with cash, just pay cash. So there's the link between the digital contract that the Kenya government signed and the deliverables for the 104 billion.
It's interesting that you say that, Daktari, because I'm seeing here that Ranson Ngonga, the Director of Public Prosecutions, has only approved 10 charges against suspects, and only 4 of them are directors of health facilities. If billions are being stolen from a health system, it's definitely not 10 people doing it.
No.
We're focusing on the wrong problem here.
And just to mention, you know, you started off by talking about the 11 billion shillings. There is, I mean, this is what we call a classic red herring. You know, people are not looking at where the money is going. The 11 billion shillings is just hogwash, you know. What really happened is last year, Aden Duale came up with a statement and said he's discovered 10.2 billion in graft, fraudulent claims. He paraded 1,188 healthcare facilities. He said they are opening charges on 21. Let me tell you, there was no 10.2 billion fraud happening. What was happening is requests from patients like him, which were rejected en masse. En masse, all of them, whether they had been, you know, whatever, they just rejected them. But you can't come on a press conference and say, hey, we've just rejected your treatment, you know? So what is the easier way to say? Fraud. Fraud is a very good narrative. But while they are accusing Kenyan hospitals of fraud and accusing Kenyan patients of fraud, the actual fraud is happening behind the scenes. So this is a real story.
By who? That's the question.
Just explain to me how we spend 10 billion shillings a year for a digital system that has never worked, you know, but we are paying. We are literally paying this amount of money because we've tied the Kenyan government to this. Somebody's getting paid a huge sum of money for Practice 360, for example. Somebody is being paid another huge sum. Do you even know that in that 104 billion shillings for digitization, there is even airtime bundles, okay? You just walk around the country and ask how many hospitals have received airtime bundles. Somebody is being paid for those bundles. There is, you know, what is it? A cloud secure system. We know the SHA portal was hacked some time back, but somebody is being paid that. So all this is happening. And then the icing on the cake, for public hospitals, which are very quiet when all this is happening, but Kenyans in rural areas are suffering, they were gotten into a contract for medical equipment, worth 200 billion shillings. Looks very good on the surface, but what the actual mechanics of this contract, for example, for every MRI that is done, when they deliver an MRI, for every MRI that is done, the vendors keep 90% of the money that SHA pays. So if an MRI is 10,000 shillings, the hospital, that public hospital where you went, only remains with 1,000 bob. A vendor somewhere is making 9,000 shillings. Now, this is the real story of the social health engineering.
Yeah.
And that is what people are not talking about, because we can't see that corruption. What we have been made to think is that hospitals are thieves, doctors are crazy, they don't show up, and patients just want treatment that they actually don't need.
Yeah. Which is horrible for a system.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
it's the entire politicization. And unfortunately, because I have interacted with the presidential advisors, and they are, respectable guys, nice people, we know each other. And we ask them, what is this all about? And, for me, they tell me, tell your members to stop stealing from us. That's what you go tell your 700 guys, the hospitals, stop stealing from us. I'm like, but it's very easy if you have spent 100 billion shillings on security. It's very easy for you to pinpoint, who logged in, who did what, who is stealing.
Should be easy.
Yeah. Should be very easy. But they tell the president the same story.
Over and over
Because
again.
the president watches the news, he sees, patients of cancer patients are complaining. He calls his advisors, his advisors tells them, we know those guys, those are fraudsters.
That's a great place to move the conversation forward. Asante sana Masai for watching the show. Masai says tuning in. Leave your questions in the comments. If you have a question to Derrick or if you have a question to Daktari, leave it in the comments and we'll be sure to ask it. Now, there's a clip of President Ruto saying that SHA is working, but for now we'll play a clip that involves Derrick's experience. Derrick is obviously seeking oncology attention. He's seeking services to treat his cancer. And the Cabinet Secretary for Health said something a few months back. Let's play the clip.
My commitment was to reform the National Health Insurance Fund. So this time round, we decided to overhaul, actually, to change the whole setup. We replaced the NHIF law with 5 pieces of legislation. And today, Kenyans that are registered on the SHA portal are 29.3 million, up from just under 8 million under the National Hospital Insurance Fund.
So that clip that we just played, Daktari, is President Ruto saying that over 29 million Kenyans are registered to SHA and about 7 have taken the means testing, and that means we're sailing smoothly. But his experience is very different in terms of healthcare, because he says, I remember when he was campaigning, he was saying that you could walk into a health facility and you get medication and healthcare as soon as you walk in. Everything is going to be fine. But his experience with a certain promise that was given by CS Duale is different. President Ruto said that, and a few months before that, this is actually a clip from today, the one you've had from Ruto. But the one that we're playing right now is from Duale a few months ago. Another clip does not have audio. We'll work on that. But the clip, gentlemen, it's a clip of CS Duale saying that the Ministry of Health and a company called Roche Pharmaceuticals have entered into a partnership. That means that some drugs that cancer patients will need for their cancer care will be free. Is there any drug that is at a subsidized cost or free because of a partnership?
Not any that I know of.
Okay, which drug did he specifically promise?
So the drug that I was supposed to use was in that list. Yeah. It's called imatinib. And I went there the next day. So what they told me at first was that, the price was subsidized. but they were considering those whose cases were a bit more critical than, you know, because I walked in, so they assume maybe I'm not as sickly as others. So I kept on going because it's quite expensive. I think it's around 290-something thousand Kenya shillings, which we later learned that was the cost of the generic one. They told me the first grade one, the original one, supposed to be about 7,000 USD or 1.1 million Kenya shillings, which is way much expensive. But I went there and they told me it's available for those whose cases are more critical. And so I knew those who really needed that drug, who, you know, are more critical than myself, and I sent them there. And I can confirm that none of them got those drugs. Actually, they were told to fill in some forms, register, and then they'll be contacted. And I think those who are handling that whole project were doctors who actually know that you can just sit waiting for, you know, confirmation, and you have a cancer diagnosis. You know, they know how brutal cancer diagnosis can be, and cells and everything. So in short, there were no drugs that were offered according to those who went there, according to me who went there. And I don't think there's any company that's offering free medication. Actually, I even use pain drugs. I use morphine. It's not free. I use tramadol. It's not free. I have to, all these things I have to, because I'm sort of managing my diagnosis because I can do targeted therapy rightly. But I'm buying everything. All drugs are not given for free. Yeah. Not anywhere in the country.
It's an experience that many Kenyans will share. And now we can play the dual clip now.
To further strengthen access to oncology care, the Ministry of Health, and I want to say it with a lot of pride, that we have signed an MOU with Roche, and I'm sure they're here, one of the biggest pharmaceutical company, to provide Hesipin 600 milligram SC and other products, therapies to eligible SHA beneficiaries. To further...
Yeah, so that was the clip. Derrick's experiences contradicts the entire thing that the CS said. But yeah, Daktari, you'll react to that after Justine's question.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'm realizing, like you've explained really well how there's a disconnect with the people in charge and the people on the ground, and there's no one working in those offices. It's almost like an imaginary digitization of sorts. And my question to you would then be, how do you make accurate diagnoses and like get the help to the patient in time with all these hurdles that you have to jump through? And for Derrick, maybe this you can answer later. You had, when we were speaking earlier, you had said that there's sometimes when you actually try and get a diagnosis, it takes much longer because the system works differently per patient and per hospital. And if you're not privy to the information of how the system works, you might end up getting your diagnosis a little later. I'd like us for you to take us through that particular experience. But first...
So just before I say that, you mentioned the president 29 million.
Yeah, registered.
He was celebrating that. And I mean, these 29 million registered Kenyans, that's not the really important number. The number is, out of 29 million Kenyans, how many of them are paying premiums? Okay, that's a really important question. And that's the number that the president should have talked about. Because to register is free. In fact, I mean, everyone should be registered. Not 29 million Kenyans. There is no cost to register. He mentioned that 7 million had taken proxy means testing. Now, that is still not a very interesting number because taking proxy means testing just means they have assessed your ability to pay and they have set a premium for you. It still doesn't tell us whether you are paying or not. And that's a design problem that they have at SHA because many Kenyans now think that their premiums, I mean, they know this. Many Kenyans think that their premiums under SHA are higher than their premiums under NHIF. So people are not paying. So those are the good numbers, but they are the real numbers somewhere else, which they should share with us. But how do we make an accurate diagnosis with all these problems and ensure patients are treated? First, in sub-Saharan Africa, the only country that has better doctors and better health facilities than Kenya is South Africa. So we have excellent doctors here. We have excellent nurses, and we have some of the good facilities in the region. So in terms of our ability to diagnose diseases and get patients help, I think this country is doing pretty well. But that's not the problem. The problem is you need to come with cash to get a good diagnosis, an accurate diagnosis. And this is a failure of the government, because it's the government that is supposed to ensure that this public service is available. I can tell you this for sure, that if you have the money in Kenya, and Derrick can confirm, you will get a diagnosis and you will get treated, if you have cancer, by a world-class oncologist, and you will get world-class services. But the caveat is if you have money, okay? Now, if you are somewhere in rural Kenya, like Kakamega, where I come from, let's say near my home in Navaholo, we cannot get an accurate diagnosis, not because we don't know, but because there is no way for you to access or afford a lab that will be able to take your sample and print out. You can't afford it. The cost is out of your reach. It is very likely that the health center right next to you has a very competent clinician who can figure out your problem. But once they write that lab request form, maybe the lab has no reagents, maybe you have no money to actually pay for this. So the problem we have is more on the side of supporting the patients to be able to reach the diagnosis, and even the healthcare system, the doctors, because the doctors, the nurses are there. But the patients cannot access this care, it is out of reach. So now, how do we make a diagnosis? I think I've given the answer. If you can afford it.
So it's the money is the motive. But,
exactly, because one of, we have a historical problem in Kenya. Modern healthcare was introduced in Kenya by the missionaries. I mean, it was part of their evangelization project. And, that's where we got so many hospitals, old hospitals in Kenya are mission hospitals. Now, because they were doing missionary work, what we as a country in our psyche, what is in our psyche, is that healthcare is a work of God. That is what is in our brains. It's been, people don't believe that, in fact, if you charge people, speaking as a doctor, you are judged, you can't say I'm suffering, it's supposed to be a noble work for God. But 21st century, healthcare has to be paid for by someone. If you walk to a hospital, like many patients tell me, my SHA worked for me. You walk to a hospital, you walked out, isn't it? Just because you walked in and walked out doesn't mean that there was no bill, that nobody paid for it. Somebody somewhere is paying for that medical bill. Now, what we have in Kenya, we have a structural problem of how to raise money for healthcare. Unfortunately, one of the things that the Kenya Kwanza administration has gotten really wrong, they have burdened a few Kenyans who have pay slips. Now, we're talking about 3.5 to 4 million Kenyans, and that number has shrunk. More people have lost jobs in the last 2 years. Oh, yes. Those are the guys who are funding healthcare for 55 million Kenyans. Now, the rest of Kenyans, they have made the other mistake. They have not created for them an affordable, cheap solution for them to finance healthcare. One of the things we suggested that was very simple, contributory system does not work in a country with 60% unemployment. It cannot work. When you have 60% unemployment and you have a country where it is 80% informal sector, what you require is a fair system, just like, for example, what we use to repair our roads. We have, the road maintenance levy. I drove my car here. I paid road maintenance levy today. Because when I fueled, a few shillings per liter went to road maintenance. But did I ask for receipts? Okay, how many shillings I paid for? But I have paid for road maintenance today. For me, that is a fairer system, where we have a protected levy that people don't need to feel. What they need to experience is roads that are tarmacked.
Asante sana, Daktari. I'll have to interrupt you there. Derrick, you could take Justine's question. And
Okay. Dr. Brand, maybe before I answer that, I don't know whether are you aware of any country in the world that has a perfectly working healthcare system that's funded by the people? I don't know whether that's where the problem is, because
the British NHS system was considered perfect for a long time. It's a totally tax-based system. It's starting to have problems recently. However, if you go to the Scandinavian countries like the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, they have a fairly high taxation. Ours is catching up because I know my tax rate right now is 42%, but not for the same lifestyle, But they have a fairly high taxation. But you get healthcare that justifies the taxation, okay? So it is possible. I think the countries which are doing really well and which have managed to protect a lot of people have gone for tax-based systems where they collect the money. So if I can afford to buy a shoe for 7,000 shillings, there's VAT on it, there's a levy on it, I contribute more than a person who the maximum they can do is buy a sandal for 200. So the guy who buys a sandal for 200 pays 5 shillings. Yeah. It's a fair share. For me, who can pay a shoe for whatever amount of money, 7,000, 8,000, I also pay a larger amount, but for me, it's my fair share. So a few countries which have a tax-funded system are doing much better than countries which are doing contributory. Obama tried this in the US. People have been crying still.
Obamacare. Yeah. Okay. And I think that's how Luigi Mangione kind of showed up, because it's the same process.
It's the same process. And one of the things that we asked the government to do, we wrote as RUFA, was just take 2 years to talk to Kenyans about the healthcare system they want before you reform. There is no rush.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good place to end it for you, Dr. Derrick, your experience with cancer in very brief words. Okay, so how would you want it?
So I'm going to take you back to early 2022, when the current president was campaigning. I mean, the manifesto was beautiful in paper. So before I got my diagnosis, I'd gone to several hospitals, including out of Nairobi, and because it was, about 5 years ago, so I was fairly young. So I was running away from this word, biopsy. They kept on telling me, you need to see whether you have cancer or not. So I would go to the next. Because, in my mind, I thought cancer was for certain demographic or maybe certain class. So I finally went to the top hospital in the country. I don't know whether I should mention them. Well, I've been mentioning them, the Kenyatta National Hospital. So when I did my biopsy in January, they told me it was going to take 2 weeks. Because I was badly off. I was on crutches, I had wounds, I had a crazy amount of pain, and we didn't know what it was. So they told me it's going to take 2 weeks for the result to be ready. So I went back, and they didn't give me a reason, but they told me my result is not ready yet. So they just asked me to go and maybe get some pain meds and keep on waiting. Then I came back again for another week. So this happened for a period of 2 months. And what I didn't know, during that period, I think there was some sort of crackdown. I think by EACC or some anti-corruption bodies, they were trying to bust healthcare providers who are taking bribes from patients or caregivers, caretakers. So there's a security guard who had brought in a patient, and he had seen me because he used to bring a lot of wardens and stuff. So he had seen me coming in, and then he told me, what you have to do, your result is ready. I'm sure it's ready. It's been ready since, I think it was ready, that's within a week. But they won't ask you for money, but you'll have to pay to get your result. So he had to take me through the corners to the histology, and we had to pay something to get my result. So myself, nobody sat me down and told me you have cancer. I got the report, and I had to send it over to someone I knew who understood it, and told me, yeah, it's cancer. So I went back to Kenyatta to look for an oncologist. And they told me, you know, there are rates for non-Kenyans and there are rates for Kenyans. So if you're going to go with the rate for Kenyans, you might take a bit longer waiting for your services. So it's better to go for a private hospital. So that's how I ended up in a private hospital, which at first I thought was going to be very expensive. But now, from the experience I had, I mean, because there are people in Kenyatta who I knew now later, because we have maybe a group or something. I think their experiences were worse than mine at a private hospital, because they had to wait for services, you know, machine breakdowns. I mean, a huge number of people, so it was overcrowding. Yeah, there were people who were literally giving up. I mean, they just say, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I lost so many friends who were just literally giving up. I mean, they just deciding to stay back at home and...
So you would want a system that is smooth, that gives everyone care when they need it.
Yes, I think that's what we were promised. And actually with NHIF, it was actually who was getting the service was the person who was paying.
Yes.
But for this, you're paying and you're not sure of getting that service. So it's crazy, and I don't know where this is going to... I think what the doctors said, if the government might decide to take time to listen to the people and maybe implement it, then probably it might work.
Asante, Derrick. We have comments here from Masai. Masai says, this points to the very heart of building sustainable health systems, because it is the finances that pretty much dictate all the other pillars. I think it's touching on what you said, Daktari. And he also says the contract between SHA and facilities indicates 90 days payment moratorium. What is the gross percentage pay of dates due by November 2025? I think that's a question to you in 30 seconds.
So, payment transparency stopped in August last year. So as at now, we have no idea who is being paid and how much they are being paid. This happened after the leak of ghost hospitals being paid. So the response by the ministry was, when this came out, they shut down all payment transparency. So we don't know how much hospitals are owed and who's being paid. But the last numbers we had as at August last year, SHA owed Kenyan hospitals 43 billion shillings. That is more than what NHIF owed them after 60 years, because the NHIF debt was a mere 33 billion.
The president said that they paid all the money in October. Is that
true?
Now,
or was that NHIF?
So, judge, jury, and executioner. I owe you money, I pay you 5 bob, I say I've paid you everything.
It's a good way to end it. Asante sana Daktari. Unfortunately, this is a conversation that we can't come to the end of, but hopefully Kenyan lives are most important in all this. His life is more important than a politician's pockets, although that's not what we frequently see in this country, but people like him get to bear the brunt of such bad decisions and poor leadership. Now for the two segments that we end the show with. First, Serikali wants to hear from you. So for today, you will remember 2 weeks ago when we told you that MPs have gone on, I think, 3 weeks vacation, and last week Batuan, I believe they were in Naivasha. So when they were in Naivasha, they had their fun, they had their committee meetings, they tabled issues and spoke about them. And one of the issues that they spoke about at that time was something that I've also mentioned before, the Safaricom divestiture by government. And at that time, I told you that from dates between 9th of February and, from dates between 3rd of February to 15th of February, there's going to be public participation events across the country. And I gave you a list of some of them. So for today, we're going to go to that list again and tell you the ones that are happening between 9th and 14th of February. That's Valentine's Day. I don't know who will show up for those. But on the 9th of February 2026, West Pokot will have their public participation. By the time you're seeing this on social media, there should be a list of all these and where they'll be happening. Tharaka Nithi also happens on the 9th, Kiambu happens on the 9th, and Vihiga happens on the 9th. For Uasin Gishu, we're going to see 10th of February. Same for Nandi and Meru. So if you're around those areas, show up and give your opinions. And then from the 11th to the 14th, we'll have public participation in Kisii, Taita Taveta, Kajiado, Samburu, Homa Bay, Mombasa, Kilifi, and Kwale. That's it for this week's public participation. Next week, we'll probably have something more because MPs will resume their seating as usual. But for this week's Serikali wants to hear from you. That's where you can meet them and share your opinions. That's it for this week. Now, Justine, explain everything poorly.
So I don't know if you guys heard, but there's no more pay for those earning 30,000 Kenyan shillings and below. The Treasury CS, in a collaboration with the man in charge of the country, said they are planning a proposal to take to Parliament to exempt Kenyans earning 30,000 and under from pay. Well, before you rejoice like J. Cole fans over here, the fall off of that pay isn't official yet. Plus, we have officially entered campaign season, so it's good words, vibes, and inshallah. Kenyan pay slips have been looking a lot like a defunding program for citizens, courtesy of the government. But if you scratch GOK close to elections, you can find logic, reason, sudden empathy, and other things that they're not known for. This Wheelbarrow Season 2 promise will impact 1.5 million Kenyans. That's what they're estimating if it takes effect. Even though pay may have been scrapped, emphasis on may. Kenyans still are in the boxing ring with SHA, housing levy, and the latest entry into the grand rising pickpocketing statutory deduction, NSSF. I'm sure the good doctor knows NSSF has gone up. The Treasury CS also said that people earning 30,000 Kenyan shillings and below should only be spending that money on rent, food, and other important things for their families, not taxes. Kenya's current living wage is actually estimated at 30,531 Kenyan shillings, meaning that pay exemption still places all those earning these wages below survival pa kukapitia. Beyond this pay savings introduction, which you've had, NEMA will be charging people more for sanitary towels and diapers for the environment. So whatever 700 shillings you're saving from pay can come in handy for like 3 packets of pads and some diapers and even aluminium if you're buying it. And people earning 24,000 shillings are already exempt from pay. So their proposal also hopes to reduce the next band of pay rates from 30 to 25%. However, NSSF newer higher rates are coming in with that assist to pick up where maybe the pay is living. And remember, GOK still has other pay as you eat schemes like VAT that are still in play. So away from all the love for your pockets to love from the Office of the Attorney General and a little bit of hate from the Central Bank of Kenya. The Office of the Attorney General has set up a VVIP lounge for civil marriages ahead of Valentine's. Mercury this month is in lover's grade, and I'm just shocked. Like, what do you mean this country is capable of human treatment?
They're not known for that.
Yeah, not really. We've seen the story like today. The Office of the Attorney General said they did this setup to provide a dignified, serene, and welcoming environment. You know, all the things Karura used to be for people getting married. The setup is complete with flowers, white chairs, and an art, so you can do one for the gram at the entrance, and then you can really tell, like, love is in the air fryer. You know, you can smell it everywhere. I'm not one to step out in the name of love, but how much did that setup cost? Can we see those procurement documents?
Yeah, someone from that sofa.
I'm always curious. I need to see the side by side. The Office of the Attorney General is returning what the CBK may have taken from lovers after they issued a warning that money bouquets are ruining knots. Here's that clip.
Now, florists have pledged to comply with the directive issued by the central bank in controlling how banknotes are used within the national economy to avoid mutilation, such as creating money bouquets as Valentine's Day approaches. Our young people involved in the trade say such creativity is their source of livelihood and warn that CBK's regulations could stifle a business that had begun to thrive. And as Martin Opio reports, they caution that these rules could be misused to harass them and cripple their businesses despite complying to the directives. Now, florists of play.
Very good. Good. So the bouquet creatorverse is severely hit, as many of them say this is the best way for them to express themselves. Like this lady.
Bring a more effective feeling or something, like you feel the quality, you feel the intensity of the gift. bring a more effective.
I'm so sorry to all the artists of these bouquets. CBK does not care about the intensity of your art. They've given you an immediate talent, hell nah, to all of you. So Valentine's haters, this is your time. You've definitely won this round. Cupid may have refused to visit you this year, but CBK said you will not be alone. You will still feel that love from a fellow hater. So CBK said that the money is theirs, like the notes themselves are theirs, and they choose how you use it. And failure to do so is going against the Penal Code Cap 367. For all the lovers out there, true love surpasses all the notes understanding, so just use flowers. CBK said gluing, pinning, and folding counts as criminal activity, so please, whatever you do, just try and keep your love committee free. The person who had gotten all that, all the change ready, you know, from all the notes, has to go back to their consistent customer base, the matatu drivers and conductors, so good luck. Jealousy is a disease case, CBK. Not sure who at your headquarters is foreshadowing being forgotten on Valentine's, but you should heal. Let people enjoy things. Hit up the factory for some personal gifts for yourself because you still have time. And now, away from lovers, we have a bit of Zaka to end the drought. So according to the National Drought Management Authority, the current drought in arid and semi-arid regions of the country has affected 2.1 million Kenyans. Here's that clip.
According to the National Drought Management Authority, at least 2.1 million Kenyans in the 23 arid and semi-arid areas are in dire need of relief food.
So at least 32 regions of the arid and semi-arid parts of the country have not seen rain for consecutive seasons. Therefore, water is scarce, just like Langata residents experience. The Kenyan Red Cross estimates that about 784,000 children are malnourished, while nearly 300,000 households lack adequate food supplies. Although the Met warned of this situation months beforehand, GOK loves to work under pressure, to deliver nothing, as residents are grappling with water scarcity and massive loss of livestock. Northeastern leaders have done their fair share of satellite appearances from Nairobi to reassure that constituents, affected, that they are working sometimes on the clock to make sure that they receive every single thing that they need. Arid and semi-arid areas in Kenya have severe abandonment issues just from history. So many funds have been put in place to equalize that. Women and children currently are eating wild leaves to deal with the hunger, but the Eldas MP recently argued that the cost of living has significantly reduced because the dollar is down. But the dollar hasn't found a way to drop into the pockets of the residents for food and water. One of those senators from the region even claimed that the horrors of the drought persist because pastoralists do not pay zaka. Here's that clip.
Sisi kama wafugaji tuko na tatizo moja. Mtu hata akikuwa na ng'ombe 100 na mbuzi 100, huyo mtu hawezi kutoa zaka kwa hiyo wanyama.
Personally, I didn't know there was some prosperity claims of the gospel in the Muslim community. Also, what amount of zakah should 14-year-olds pay when they're supposed to be in school and they're currently digging wells, while others are completely exhausted from the search of water? How should they be getting, how much should they pay for them to be getting the share of the rain? So to all the leaders of the region, send your answer to this question to *9#. And lastly, we have a tennis star whose light has been dimmed a bit because Angela Okutoi, who is a star champion, is currently fundraising for 10 million Kenyan shillings to go pro as a WTA player. Kenyan athletes taking up any sport less played are severely underfunded. We saw this from David Munywa, who played darts, and Alexandra Ndolo, who's a really good fencing champion, who have had to use their money or dish out a begging bowl to be able to compete. Even if the ministry can't put 2 and 2 together for Angela to get her sponsorship, at least they can put her in a position to be in rooms with people who can. Angela has 13 ITF doubles championship titles and 4 singles titles, and she has won all this just by faith and professional sight. It's no wonder even former winners are on sports Tinder, just kind of swiping right on new countries, willing to take them. Like Bridget Kosgei, who was a former Kenyan marathon world record holder, who switched her allegiance from Kenya to Turkey. So building a stadium worth 44 billion plus interest, when athletes' welfare itself is barely hitting those second serves, so they have to walk around begging for assistance to advance their professional careers, means that the government's priorities are as clear as the visibility in Limuru in July. I hope this week is much better than...
Yeah. I'm disappointed hearing that Angela Kutoi's story because she comes from a humble background, and the president is so willing to, in big occasions, make these political statements to dish out money when systems don't work for people like Angela. Asante sana, Justine. That was a mix of funny but also very disappointing, like that Northeastern MP. Senator, was it? That was horrible. That you took 2.5% of your wealth, and that's why that's happening. That's horrible. But briefly, Daktari and Derrick. Derrick, I'll start with you. You have had this journey that you've seen your life almost end, because I imagine chemotherapy is not that easy. What's the status of your health right now in 30 seconds?
I have a recurrence right now. But unfortunately, I was told the sort of treatment that I need right now, it's not available. It's not, easily available in the country. So they gave me the liberty to look for treatment elsewhere, which is also still expensive, even abroad. So still navigating the ways, but right now I'm trying just to manage just check the blood count, immunity levels and stuff, and pain before I officially begin that treatment. Yeah, but it's not as brutal as the previous one, but it's growing, so we're hoping care will be, I'll get care before it gets to uncontrollable levels.
Yeah. Here we speak about things, and for you, you live those things. It's not something that you're reading like me and asking questions about.
Chemotherapy is it's like a grenade. It messes up with your mental psyche, everything, finances, self-esteem, because I started growing back my hair, I think last year. So you even don't want to see people, but you have to see them because, they're there to maybe help you. So it's crazy. You go for chemo and you promise never to go back there again. You remember your life literally depends on it. So it's been a very, very tough journey. And I think, I thank God I'm here today. Yeah.
Daktari, people like him live through these realities, and politicians out there shouting atop sunroofs, saying all these things, and how does that translate eventually to him getting the care that he deserves?
I think one of the tragedies of the current conversation on health is that it's a campaign tool, and so politicians will tell you whatever suits their chances of re-election, So, I can guarantee you, Derrick's story would be very quickly dismissed. He will be called a fake patient, he has never seen a hospital, and if it turns out they can't discredit him that way, they will reach out to him and, now make him the poster child of SHA, but how many Derricks are there in Kenya? So it is quite unfortunate that these tragedies are turned into, sloganeering and campaign things instead of policies. What I would like to see really for patients like him is, even if we can just go back to the cover under NHIF, maybe we can't afford more, but under NHIF, it was 600,000 per year per person. But if you had a spouse, guess what? You could dip into your spouse's limit. So that could potentially be 1.2 million shillings. And I'm also just reading comments here from my friends who, I don't know where they are watching this, that they are like, no, SHA is better than NHIF. In fact, somebody was saying on a scale of 1 to 10, I give it a 7. And this is a guy I know very well. And the public seems to think that the misgiving hospitals have with the social health authority is all about payment and money. But this is not the truth. What we want Kenyans to know is that just next to him, because he is living the experience, the only other people who have as close as an experience to him is us, because we take care of them. So a lot of this has to do with our patients who are suffering, and we can see them suffer. So if they need to fix this and depoliticize it.
Asante. Asante sana, Doctor. That's a great place to end it. Depoliticize. And Derrick, we wish you all the best here at The Big Picture.
Thank you.
And we're deeply appreciative of you sharing your story on our platform.
Thank you.
Asante sana to you for watching this episode. It's been Tom and Justine, and this is The Big Picture. Our guests have been Dr. Brian and our cancer survivor, Derrick. Thank you for watching. Big Picture returns next week. See you then.